since all these incidents have surfaced. So
Yes.
everybody's going to be watching that.
Scrutinizing, you'd say. But first, when it comes to the job hunt, well, there may be a few misconceptions out there.
Especially if you are under the age of 25, a really hard-hit group when it comes to the unemployment rate. A lot of young people also today, and this makes things even more difficult, believe that they don't need to work from the bottom up. They're ready for the top spot. Which is a tough situation to start from. And also, a lot of people just feel that that cubicle job is not for them. So how do you change the current trend? How do you get people thinking the right way if they're beginning that job search for the first time in their life? And Mary Abbajay is here now from the the Cornerstone Group here, and she may be able to shed some light on all of this. Mary, good to see you again.
Good to see you guys. Happy
Welcome.
spring.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
You know, we hear so much about this age group, the early 20-somethings, and how they've been, throughout their schooling years, largely a pampered group. Everybody's a winner. And then, boom, you hit the job market. And man, a lot of these kids are meeting with real rejection along the way.
They really are. And there's not a generation that's necessarily prepared for rejection. And at the same time, it is a generation that's competed their whole lives for all the spots. Like these kids have had to compete since, to get into the preschools and the nursery schools. But they're entering right now a tough, tough job market. And we've been working with young people and organizations, onboarding young people for several years now. And we're seeing a big difference now that the job market has soured in these young people and their expectations.
So this group has a name now.
They have several names.
No, the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, and now these are the
Gen Ys or the millennials or the nexters are often called. I usually refer to them as Gen Y.
And they range from what, 18 to almost
They're
30?
the folks who are just late 20s to late teens. So they're the folks born in the early 80s to about 2000.
Mm-hmm. And I hear that the unemployment rate is just astronomically high for that group.
Yeah, this is a group that's finding it really tough to get their first jobs. And it's also a group that hasn't necessarily worked a lot during their high school years either. Mm-hmm. It's a group, as you said before, their families have really experienced a lot of economic wealth and prosperity, so they're not used to working anyway. So they're getting in the job market, and the job market is tough. And a few years ago, these young people were getting 4 and 5 offers, and now they're getting none.
So let's start at the very beginning.
Okay.
First of all, you got to prep them on how to approach a job hunt and to meet with that rejection, because it's going to happen several times.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it's hard for anybody, but it's especially harder for this younger generation who hasn't really been prepped. And a lot of these people, these young people, aren't even doing the job search themselves. Their parents are really involved in it. So that makes it very difficult as well. We talk to young people, and it's the basics that they don't understand. Interviewing, resume sending and writing, cover letters. And a lot of them think that the internet's how they're going to find their job. And the internet's a great tool, but there's also a lot of just hitting the pavement that they're not used to doing.
And maybe showing up in work appropriate
well,
attire.
It's funny, and this is a generation.
Showing up on time, showing up regularly, being there every day.
Absolutely. I mean, we like to talk about telework and teleflex, but largely the baby boomers have set the work rules, and the baby boomers are workaholics, and they want to see your butt in your seat from 9 to 5, or really like 9 to 6, 9 to 7. And this generation just isn't used to working that way. They actually really like to work from home at odd hours, and they don't really get that you have to be there at 9 just because that's the way it's done. And this is also a generation that we call the quarterback generation, meaning they're used to having adults being very invested in their future, writing their plays, giving them the rubric for success. Like when I teach college, you have to tell these kids exactly how to get the A. And so they get into the workplace and they expect the adults to be invested in them in the same way. And that's just not work.
Well, let's talk about what they do bring to the table.
They bring so much to the table.
This is a generation that is smart and very tech savvy.
It's the most educated generation we've ever had, meaning more of them went to college than any other generation. Their technical skills are beyond compare. I mean, they were what we call digital natives. And they come to the workplace, they have energy, they have fresh ideas, they have a lot to offer, and they're met with a little bit of resistance from us old people, right? Because it's the new generation's job to kind of push the old generation out a little bit, and it's the old generation's job to resist. So we're seeing a lot of clashing and friction in the workplace right now.
Yeah, and especially with that technological advantage that they have, because I'm tremendously insecure about my technological handicaps. I mean, give me an old Corona electric typewriter and I'll be
right. Well, thank you for admitting that, because that's absolutely true. This is the first time any generation has entered the workplace with value to offer now, and it's scary to those of us who don't have that same value.
And what you were saying about they don't really necessarily want to show up at 9 and work till 5 every day, and they are tech savvy, but this generation may be multitasking. So even if they're home or somewhere else, they may be working. I mean, they're never really not connected.
They're never really not connected. And part of the clash point we see is not that they have a bad work ethic, they have a different work ethic. And so that feels bad to those of us who are used to working, 8 to 6 and working really hard. The way they approach work is very different. You're right, Melanie. It's more of a multitasking approach, much less of about the hours worked than the work being done.
Well, maybe they can use that to their advantage.
Yeah.
We hear, that the jobs are few and far between, but temporary jobs are certainly available. Maybe that's accommodating to that kind of a lifestyle.
It is very accommodating to that kind of lifestyle. Any kind of job, any kind of employer that offers flexibility and understands these young workers. That's the key for organizations. If you rely on onboarding a cohort of young people, then you really do have to think about how your work is structured and how you can be flexible to really take advantage of these great talents. And it is true that they do have a little bit of an accelerated expectation about how much work it's going to take and how long they have to put in to get their rewards. So that is true.
I was wondering that because now the jobs are, let's face it, more scarce than they were a few years back when everybody had 10 offers.
Absolutely.
I mean, you kind of have to go back to yesteryear on the whole career and working hard and trying to work up the ladder toward your career goals.
That's exactly right.
I mean, jump in at step number 10.
That's exactly right. And some things will never change. And what will never change is that hard work equals success. And I think if you're raised where you get knowledge by the click of a button. Like I learned stuff by books, library experience. This generation can learn things by click of a button. They Google it and they have instant knowledge. And so when you can get knowledge that quickly, it's hard to realize that it's going to take time for that knowledge and experience to sink to get to your career goals.
Let's talk about that rejection factor again, because that is so key. A lot of it, I guess, depends on your family upbringing and how your parents instilled a value of stick-to-itiveness and picking yourself up by your bootstraps. But a lot of kids don't have that. Certainly the unemployment rate, I think when you factor in those people who have stopped looking for work, it's upwards like 16 or 17%. And that is probably reflective of people who have given up on dealing with rejection. They say, I'm not going to look anymore. I'm giving up on it. So that's a quantifiable
that really is.
aspect of that.
And for young people, what I would say is, first of all, I acknowledge that this is a really horrible time to be starting your career. I mean, you just couldn't get any worse, except for when I started my career in the 80s. It was bad. And they are at a disadvantage. I mean, the statistics show that if you start your career in time of recession, you will be a few years behind everybody else. And at the same time, there's no excuse not to keep trying. So you have to keep trying. I think for today's young people, my big piece of advice would be take anything you can get. Get job experience, whether it's volunteering, whether it's temping, whatever it is. Your dream job may have to wait a few years. And so we're seeing a lot of young kids resisting that idea. And I would say don't resist that. Get some work experience any way you can get it, and don't give up.
So blast those resumes out on Monster.com and those job sites.
Network, talk to people, absolutely. And don't just rely on the internet. That's what they do too much of. They rely too much on the internet. Go to places go to your parents' friends, hit the pavement and get anything you can.
Okay.
And hopefully Mom and Dad will accommodate you with food and lodging.
Hopefully they will.
No, a few more
This is a great time to stay home for a while.
Mary Abbajay with Career Center. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Always